Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku altered his quirk history. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sun was setting over Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, casting long, jagged shadows across the mountains of trash that choked the coastline. The smell was a pungent cocktail of rotting seaweed, rusted iron, and wet cardboard. But to Izuku Midoriya, the air felt thin, almost electrified. He was kneeling on the asphalt of the sidewalk overlooking the beach, his uniform knees scuffed, tears drying sticky and cold on his cheeks. Standing before him, skeletal and steaming, was the greatest hero the world had ever known. You can be a hero, those words. They were the anchor Izuku had been drifting without for 10 years. They were the salvation he had prayed for every time Bakugo's palms sparked. Every time a teacher looked through him, every time he apologized to his mother for simply existing. Izuku sobbed, his forehead touching the pavement. For a moment, the world was perfect. The narrative was complete. The underdog had been chosen. I deem you worthy of my power, All Might said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in Izuku's sternum. My quirk is yours to inherit. Izuku looked up, snot running down his nose, eyes wide and shimmering. Huh, I'm talking about my power, kid. The torch I pass on to you. All Might struck a pose, blood coughing from his lips in a sudden, deflationary burst. You said you didn't have a quirk, right? Well, I'm going to give you mine. The euphoria that had lifted Izuku into the stratosphere suddenly hit a ceiling. His brain, usually a chaotic storm of fanboy enthusiasm, suddenly engaged a different gear. It was the gear reserved for his notebooks, for the relentless analysis of Heroes' society, laws, and logistics. The tears stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly. Give me your quirk? Izuku repeated, his voice trembling, but not from emotion anymore. From fear. It is called One for All. All Might explained, launching into the history of the cultivation of power, the passing of the torch, the sacred duty. He spoke of stockpiled energy, of the ability to smash through adversity. Izuku listened. He processed. And then, the crushing weight of reality dropped on him like a collapsing building. Wait, Izuku interrupted. All Might paused mid-monologue. Young Midoriya? Izuku scrambled to his feet, his hands shaking. He began to pace, his muttering habit kicking in at a feverish velocity. Wait. That's physically impossible according to current quirk science. But assuming it's true because you're All Might, the logistical footprint is catastrophic. Quirk factors are genetic markers. The Quirk Registry, the HPSC, the 2134 Metability Regulation Act. Kid, you're muttering, All Might said, sweat dropping. Izuku whipped around, his face pale. All Might. We can't do that. All Might blinked, his sunken eyes widening. Excuse me? I'm offering you the number one power in the world, and if I take it, I'll be arrested within a week. Or dissected, Izuku said, his voice rising in pitch. He fumbled for his backpack, ripping out a notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, No. 13, and flipped to the back pages where he had scribbled notes on hero law. Look, Izuku pointed, his fingers shaking. Japan has a 99.8% quirk registration rate by age 4. Late bloomers are statistically non-existent past the age of 7. If I suddenly manifest a power, especially one that rivals yours, at the age of 15, right before the UA entrance exam, the red flags won't just wave. They'll catch on fire. All Might scratched the back of his head. Well, surely we can just say it. Woke up. Quirks aren't magic, All Might. They're biological functions. Izuku was hyperventilating now. There are genetic registries. My medical file says quirkless. It has the double-jointed pinky toe x-rays to prove it. If I show up at UA and punch a robot into the stratosphere, the Hero Public Safety Commission will audit my file. They'll see a biological discrepancy. They'll investigate. And if they find out power can be transferred. Izuku stopped. The implication hung in the air between them, heavier than the trash piles. If the world knew All Might's power could be given away, All Might wouldn't just be a symbol of peace. He would be a target. Every villain, every corrupt government official, Every desperate person would hunt him down to take it. And if they knew Izuku had it, All for one, All Might whispered, the name slipping out before he could catch it. Izuku froze. Whew! All Might sighed, sitting heavily on the guardrail. The steam dissipated, leaving him looking older, frilier. An old enemy. The one who gave me this injury. He can steal quirks, young Midoriya. If he, or his followers, suspect that my power has moved to a new vessel, a defenseless, previously quirkless vessel, they'll come for me, Izuku finished. And they'll kill my mom to get to me. The silence that followed was suffocating. The ocean waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, counting down the seconds of their sudden impasse. I want to be a hero, Izuku whispered, his fists clenching at his sides. More than anything. But I can't be a hero if I'm a liability to the world just by existing. We can't just train my body, All Might. We have to train the lie. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the trembling legs, the fear in his eyes, but beneath that, he saw a terrifyingly sharp intellect. He had chosen a successor for his heart, but he was realizing, rapidly, that he had also chosen a strategist. You're right, All Might said somberly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. I have a friend. A detective in the force. He knows the secret. If we're going to do this, we need to rewrite history before we can write the future. 2 days later, Mizudafu General Hospital Archives Department. The room smelled of ozone and stale coffee. It was a server room in the basement of the city's central medical database hub, a place where the hum of cooling fans drowned out all conversation. 3 people stood around a glowing terminal. All Might, in his skeletal form, leaned against a server rack, looking out of place in his baggy yellow suit. Izuku stood nervously by the keyboard, his hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white, and sitting at the terminal was a man in a tan trench coat and a matching hat, typing with a speed that blurred his fingers. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi didn't look like a criminal mastermind, but right now, he was committing a federal felony. This is risky, Toshinori, Tsukachi muttered, the blue light of the screen reflecting in his tired eyes. Altering a federal Quirk registry entry is a Class A felony. If the HPSC traces this back to my login, they won't, All Might said, though he sounded unsure. You said you had a backdoor. I do. But backdoors have squeaky hinges. Tsukachi hit a key, bringing up a profile. A picture of a younger, smiling 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya popped up. Next to it, in bold red letters, quirkless, Izuku flinched looking at it. That word had defined his entire life. It was his shackle. Now they were about to break it, but they were replacing it with something heavy in a different way. Okay, Midoriya, Tsukachi said, spinning the chair slightly. We need a narrative that fits the physiology. Toshinori tells me this power breaks bones if you aren't prepared? Yeah, Izuku said, his voice small. He said it's like overfilling a water balloon, and you've been quirkless your whole life. No accidental discharges, no floating toys, Tsukachi mused. So, we can't say it just appeared. That triggers the late bloomer investigation protocols. We need to make it look like you always had it, but it was suppressed. A dormant mutation? Izuku suggested. He had spent the last 48 hours writing in a new notebook, titled The Pyre Principle. What if my body generated the energy, but couldn't release it? A blockage in the quirk factor pathways? Tsukachi nodded slowly. Plausible. Energy stockpile classification. If the pathways were blocked, the energy would build up internally. It would explain why you never used it, you couldn't. But why now? Puberty? All Might suggested weakly. Too cliché, Izuku and Tsukachi said in unison. Izuku tapped his chin, his eyes darting back and forth. Medication. We say the doctor who diagnosed me at 4 made a mistake. He saw the energy build up and thought it was a cancerous tumor or a lethal autoimmune reaction. He put me on heavy suppressants. Off-the-books suppressants because he was, I don't know, incompetent? Or maybe he thought he was saving me from exploding. Tsukachi's eyes widened. That's good. That's really good. It paints you as a victim of medical malpractice. It generates sympathy and explains why there's no public record of your quirk usage. You weren't quirkless, you were caged. It also covers the damage, Izuku added, a dark realization hitting him. When I use one for all, if I break my arm, we can claim it's because the pipes are rusty. My body isn't used to the output because it's been suppressed for a decade. Sakachi turned back to the screen. Okay. I'm scrubbing the Quirkless tag. I'm replacing it with... He typed furiously. Quirk, overcharged dormant / volatile. Type, emitter / mutant hybrid. Description, subject accumulates biokinetic energy at a cellular level. Due to a congenital narrowing of the expulsion canals, energy was trapped within the skeletal structure. I'm backdating a prescription history, Sakachi narrated as he worked. Creating a ghost doctor. Dr. Tsubasa, no, he's actually missing, that might be too close to the league. Let's go with a private clinic in the countryside that burned down 5 years ago. Records lost. Perfect cover. He hit enter. A progress bar filled up. Update complete. The screen refreshed. The red Quirkless was gone. In its place was the new lie. A lie that turned Izuku from a powerless dreamer into a ticking time bomb. It's done, Sakachi exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. As far as the Japanese government is concerned, Izuku Midoriya is a tragic medical case who has just recently been weaned off his suppressants. All Might placed a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder. This changes things, my boy. You aren't just training to inherit power anymore. You have to act the part. You have to pretend that you are terrified of this power. Izuku looked at his hands. He thought about the entrance exam, 10 months away. He thought about his mother. I have to tell Mom, Izuku whispered. The room went silent. Young Midoriya. All Might started. I have to, Izuku insisted, tears welling up again. If I don't tell her the lie, if she reacts with shock when I use the quirk on the news, people will know. She has to believe it too. I have to gaslight my own mother. Sakachi looked at the boy with a mixture of pity and respect. That's the hardest part of undercover work, kid. The people you love become part of the performance. 3 months later, the Midoriya apartment. The apartment was quiet, save for the humming of the refrigerator. Inko Midoriya sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling around a cup of tea. Opposite her, Izuku sat with his head bowed, a falsified medical report printed on official-looking paper Sakachi had forged sliding across the table. I don't understand, Inko said, her voice watery. The doctor, he said you were quirkless. The toe joint. He was wrong, Mom, Izuku said. He forced his voice to be steady, forced himself to look her in the eye. This was his first villain fight. The villain was the truth. Or he lied. The new doctor. He said the energy was eating me alive from the inside. Those vitamins I took as a kid? They were suppressants. But why? Inko sobbed, reaching out to touch his hand. Why didn't you tell me you were in pain? I didn't know, Izuku lied. I just thought. I thought everyone felt like their skin was too tight. But lately, it's been getting worse. The doctor said we have to stop the suppressants. If we don't, the pressure will kill me. Inko covered her mouth, a fresh wave of tears spilling over. Oh, Izuku. My baby. I'm so sorry. I thought I gave you nothing, but I gave you something that hurt you. Izuku felt a jagged crack form in his heart. He stood up and hugged her, burying his face in her shoulder. He was hugging her to comfort her, but also to hide his face. He couldn't let her see the guilt burning in his eyes. It's okay, Mom, he whispered into her cardigan. I'm going to learn to control it. I'm going to UE not just to be a hero, but to get help. They have specialists. Recovery girl. They can fix me. Inko held him tighter. You have to be careful, Izuku. Please. Don't explode. Don't leave me. I won't, he promised. I'm going to survive this. It was the first true thing he had said all night. 10 months later, Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. The trash was gone. 10 months of hell. 10 months of dragging fridges, hauling truck tires, and sprinting through soft sand until his lungs tasted like blood. Izuku stood atop the clean concrete embankment, shirtless, his body honed into a vessel of lean, corded muscle. He wasn't the scrawny kid who cried on the sidewalk anymore. He was a weapon being forged, but the physical training was only half the regimen. Every night, after the hauling was done, All Might and Izuku would sit on the clean sand and review the script. When you throw a punch, All Might had instructed, you cannot smile. I smile to show I am in control. You must grimace. You must look like you are holding back a hurricane with a paper umbrella. If I break my arm, Izuku had countered, scribbling in his notebook, I clutch it and apologize. I say the valve stuck. I blame the biology. Correct. And your fighting style, no smashes. Not yet. You call it venting. You are releasing pressure. Now, the sun was rising on the day of the entrance exam. The golden light glittered off the ocean, reclaiming the beauty of the coast. All Might stood before him, holding a single strand of golden hair. You have done well, young Midoriya, All Might said, his iconic grin softer than usual. You have built the vessel. And you have built the fortress of lies to protect it. Are you ready? Izuku looked at the hair. This was it. The point of no return. Once he swallowed this, he was legally a fraud. He was a vigilante in the eyes of the law, hiding a quirk that didn't belong to him, under a name that was a fabrication. He thought about Bakugo. Kaken is going to be furious. He thought about Aizawa, the teacher renowned for expulsions. He'll hate me. He hates liabilities. He thought about the villains lurking in the shadows. Let them come. Izuku took the hair. Eat this, All Might commanded. Izuku didn't hesitate. He swallowed the strand, gagging slightly, but forcing it down. He waited for the surge, the lightning, the power. Nothing happened yet. It would take time to digest. How do you feel? All Might asked. Izuku wiped his mouth. He looked at his hand, clenching it into a fist. He channeled the feeling of the lie he had lived for the last year. He summoned the anxiety, the fear, and he wrapped it around his determination like armor. I feel, Izuku said, looking up with eyes that held a new, dangerous intensity, like I'm about to break. Yue High School, the practical exam, the massive gates of Battle Center B loomed overhead. A crowd of hundreds of examinees murmured in nervous excitement. Izuku stood in the middle of the pack, wearing a plain green tracksuit. He was vibrating. Usually, this was where Izuku would be muttering about the other students' quirks. Look, that guy has engines in his legs. She can manipulate gravity. But today, he was silent. He held his right arm with his left hand, gripping his bicep tightly. It was a calculated pose. It signaled distress. It signaled containment. Out of my way, Deku. The growl came from behind him. Katsuki Bakugo shoved past, his shoulders checking Izuku hard. Don't block the path. You're just gonna die out there anyway without a quirk. Izuku stumbled but caught himself. He looked at Bakugo's back. The urge to tell him the truth was overwhelming. I have a quirk now, Kaken. No. Not a quirk. A curse. I'm not blocking you, Kaken, Izuku said quietly. Bakugo paused. He turned, his red eyes narrowing. He knew Deku. He knew every flinch, every stutter. But there was something wrong with this picture. Deku wasn't cowering. He was sweating? No, he was pale. He looked sick. What's wrong with you? Bakugo sneered. You look like you're gonna puke. My meds, Izuku whispered, loud enough for the students nearby to hear. I stopped taking them. Ha! Bakugo scowled. What meds? Psycho pills? For the pressure, Izuku said, clutching his arm tighter. The doctor said, if I don't let it out, I'll die. Bakugo stared at him, confused. Before he could demand an answer, the voice of President Mike boomed over the speakers. Start. The crowd hesitated. What are you waiting for? There are no countdowns in real battles. Go! 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 The students surged forward. Bakugo blasted off with explosions. Ida revved his engines. Izuku stood still for a split second. He closed his eyes. He reached down into the pit of his stomach, searching for the ember All Might had given him. He found it. It wasn't an ember. It was a bonfire's raging in a hurricane, one for all. It screamed to be let out. It flooded his veins, feeling like liquid lightning. It hurt. It actually hurt. The power was too much for his pathways, just as the lie claimed. Perfect. Izuku opened his eyes. Green electricity arced off his skin, crackling violently. It wasn't the smooth, controlled flow All Might had. It was erratic, jagged, dangerous. He took a step, and the concrete beneath his foot spider-webbed. Whoa! A student nearby shouted, jumping back. What the hell is that? Izuku didn't answer. He launched himself forward. He didn't use full cowling. He didn't know how yet. He simply pushed the energy into his legs and shoved. He moved like a blur, a green streak that tore through the wind. He bypassed the crowd, slamming into the first one-pointer robot he saw. He pulled his fist back. Don't smash. Vent. Get back! Izuku screamed, not at the robot, but at the other students. It's gonna blow! He punched. He didn't hold back enough. One for all roared. The impact was deafening. The robot didn't just break, it disintegrated. The metal chest plate caved in, the head flew off, and a shockwave of air pressure blasted the windows out of the nearby buildings. Izuku flew backward from the recoil, tumbling across the asphalt. He sat up, gasping. His right arm was purple, dangling uselessly at his side. His sleeve was shredded. Pain. White-hot, blinding pain. But the narrative held. Students had stopped fighting to stare. They weren't looking at him with the awe reserved for a hero. They were looking at him with horror. Holy crap, a boy with spiky red hair whispered. Did you see his arm? It just snapped. Is that his quirk? Another girl asked. It looks like it hurts him. Izuku gritted his teeth, clutching his broken arm with his good hand. He forced the scream down, turning it into a guttural groan. The valve. Izuku gasped, playing to the cheap seats. Stuck valve. Observation room. In a darkened room filled with monitors, the teachers of UA High watched the chaos unfold. Impressive destructive power, Midnight noted, leaning forward. But zero control. He just shattered his own limb. Student 2314. Izuku Midoriya, Snite read from a tablet. File says. Quirk, overcharge. Recently off suppressants. Classified as a dormant mutant type until 10 months ago. In the back of the room, Shota Aizawa stood with his arms crossed, his scarf hiding his mouth. His bloodshot eyes were fixed on the screen showing the green-haired boy clutching his arm. Aizawa hated entrance exams. They were illogical. They favored flashy quirks and ignored potential. But this was different. He looked at the file on his own screen. Drastic increase in bioenergy. Skeletal structure unadapted. Highly volatile. He's a cannon made of glass, Aizawa muttered. It is a brave thing, a small voice squeaked. Principal Niza sat in his chair, sipping tea. To wield a power that hurts you, in order to save others. But very dangerous. If he cannot regulate that output, he is a liability to himself and the city. He shouldn't be here, Aizawa stated flatly. He belongs in a hospital, not a hero course. Perhaps, Niza smiled, his eyes glinting. Or perhaps he is exactly the kind of puzzle UA is meant to solve. Look! On the screen, the zero-pointer had appeared. The massive behemoth rose above the buildings, casting a shadow over the city. The other examinees were fleeing in terror, but the green-haired boy wasn't running away. He was looking up. He was shaking. He was terrified. And then, he saw the girl trapped under the rubble. Aizawa watched as Izuku Midoriya's face changed. The actor vanished. The pain vanished. For a split second, the boy stopped looking like a medical victim and looked like a hero. Izuku launched himself into the air. A single, suicidal leap. He's going to break his legs, Vlad King winced. Izuku reached the face of the giant robot. He drew back his broken arm. No, his other arm. The left one. Smash. The robot's face crumbled. The sheer force of the displacement punched a hole in the clouds above the city. As Izuku fell, his limbs flailing, both legs and one arm broken, Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He has no landing strategy, Aizawa noted. He simply fired the gun. Only the gravity girl's slap saved him from becoming a stain on the pavement. The buzzer sounded. The exam was over. Izuku lay on the ground, staring up at the sky. His body was screaming. His bones were powder. But he was alive. Recovery girl hobbled onto the scene, tooting loudly. Good grief. I haven't seen self-destruction like this in years. Are you trying to kill yourself, Sonny? She knelt beside him, her lips puckering for a healing kiss. Wait, Izuku wheezed, grabbing her sleeve with his few working fingers. He looked around. Students were watching. He had to maintain the cover. My file. Did you read it? Recovery Girl paused. She knew. All Might had briefed her yesterday. She hated the lie, but she understood the necessity. Yes, dearie, she said, her voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. Quirk overcharge. Nasty business. Your body just can't handle the output yet. We'll have to patch up these fractures. Looks like stress fractures that finally gave way. She kissed his forehead. As the stamina drained from him and darkness took the edges of his vision, Izuku heard the murmurs of the crowd. Did you hear that? Overcharge. He's like a ticking bomb. Scary. But he saved her. Izuku closed his eyes, letting the unconsciousness take him. He had done it. He had fooled them. He had fooled the students. He had fooled the teachers. But as he drifted off, a cold thought pricked the back of his mind. Somewhere, in a dark bar, a man with a hand covering his face might be watching the replay. And lies, no matter how well crafted, always left a paper trail. He was in. But the real danger had just begun. The world was white. A sterile, blinding white that smelled of antiseptic and peppermint. Izuku Midoriya floated in that whiteness for a long time, untethered from the gravity that had so recently tried to crush him. There was no pain, only a distant, rhythmic beeping that synced with the sluggish beat of his heart. Then, sensation returned. And it brought the fire. It started in his right arm, a throbbing, grinding ache that felt less like a broken bone and more like his marrow had been replaced with molten lead. Then, his legs joined the chorus, screaming in a high-pitched agony that made his eyes snap open. He gasped, his back arching off the mattress. Easy, Sonny. Easy. A wrinkled hand pressed firmly against his chest, pushing him back down. Izuku blinked, his vision swimming until the blurry shape above him resolved into the small, helmeted figure of Recovery Girl. You're in the temporary infirmary at the exam site, the old heroine said, her voice sharp but laced with a tired concern. I've treated the fractures, but your stamina is in the gutter. If I do any more, you'll go into cardiac arrest. You need to sleep it off. Izuku stared at the ceiling, his breathing jagged. Memories of the last 10 minutes crashed into him like the zero-pointer, the leap, the smash, the fall, the slap. I did it. The thought was immediately followed by a colder, sharper realization. I showed them. The others? Izuku croaked, his throat dry. Fine. Shaken up, but fine. The girl you saved is asking about you, Recovery Girl said, hopping down from her stool to check a monitor. But we need to talk about you, Midoriya. The air in the room shifted. The medical warmth evaporated, replaced by a conspiratorial chill. The door to the infirmary hissed open. A skeletal figure in a baggy yellow suit slipped inside, locking the door behind him. All Might looked terrible, worse than usual. His eyes were sunken deep into shadowed sockets, and his hands were trembling slightly. Chio, All Might said, his voice a low rumble. Tashinori, she snapped back, not turning around. I should hit you with my cane. Look at this boy. Look at his arm. I know, All Might whispered. He walked to the bedside, looking down at Izuku with an expression of profound guilt. Izuku tried to sit up, wincing as his arm jostled in its sling. It was heavily bandaged, wrapped in a cast that looked more like industrial piping than plaster. All Might. I smashed it. You certainly did, All Might said, forcing a weak smile. But we aren't here to celebrate just yet. We have to secure the narrative. Recovery Girl sighed, pulling a clipboard from the end of the bed. She tapped it with a pen. I've read the file you two cooked up. Quirk, overcharge. A dormant stockpile mutation with narrow expulsion canals. She looked over her glasses at Izuku. It's a load of hogwash, but it's scientifically consistent with the damage I'm seeing. Your body is tearing itself apart because it can't handle the torque. Can you fix it? Izuku asked, looking at his purple, swollen fingers peeking out of the cast. I can heal the bones, Recovery Girl said sternly. But I can't fix the lie. If I heal you completely, erase the scars, make you look good as new, it contradicts your medical history. A boy with a volatile, self-destructive quirk shouldn't heal like a prime All Might. He should have chronic issues. Stress fractures. Inflammation. Izuku swallowed hard. So, I have to stay hurt? I accelerated the healing enough so the bones are knit, she explained. But I left the soft tissue damage. You're going to be sore for weeks. You're going to have scars. And on your medical chart for UA, I've noted extensive microfracturing due to long-term suppression pressure. To the school, you aren't just injured from the exam. You're injured from existing. All Might gripped the bed rail. It's for your protection, young Midoriya. If you heal too fast, they'll suspect a secondary quirk or a connection to me. We need you to look fragile. Izuku looked at his arm. He had wanted to be a symbol of peace. A pillar of strength. Instead, he was being crafted into a symbol of tragedy. A glass cannon. I understand, Izuku whispered. He looked up, his green eyes hardening. What about the students? Did they buy it? All Might nodded slowly. I was in the observation room. The reaction wasn't envy. It was horror. They think you're a loose cannon. Aizawa. Eraserhead seemed particularly displeased. Mr. Aizawa was watching? Izuku felt a cold sweat break out. He knew Eraserhead's reputation. The man who expelled an entire class. The man who hated irrationality. He called you a liability, All Might admitted. Izuku sank back into the pillow. Perfect, he murmured, closing his eyes. That's exactly what the file says I am. 1 week later, the Midoriya household. The silence in the apartment was heavy, filled only by the scratching of Izuku's pencil. He was sitting at his desk, his right arm still in a sling, his left hand furiously writing in a new notebook titled The Pyre Principle, Volume 1 Mythology Maintenance. He wasn't analyzing heroes. He was analyzing himself. Entry 14, Pain Management Acting. When using 100% output, the pain is a 9 out of 10. When using the venting technique Smashing Fingers, pain is 8 out of 10. To maintain the overcharge cover, I must simulate chronic pain even when idle. Rub the joints. Wince when lifting heavy objects. Never let them see me comfortable. If I look comfortable, they will wonder why I'm not using the power more. Izuku? The soft voice made him jump. He slammed the notebook shut and spun around. His mother stood in the doorway, holding a laundry basket. Her eyes were red-rimmed, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Mom, Izuku said, forcing a smile. I'm fine. Just studying. Inko walked into the room, setting the basket down. She looked at his arm, wrapped in the thick medical sling, and her lip trembled. The letter should be here soon, she whispered. Yeah, Izuku. She sat on the edge of his bed, wringing her hands. Are you sure about this? Yue? I mean, look at you. 1 punch and you were in surgery. The doctors said your bones looked like you'd been in a car crash. Izuku felt the guilt churn in his stomach. He had to lie. He had to keep lying. Every time he reassured her with a falsehood, he felt a piece of his soul chip away. It's the only way, Mom, he said, keeping his voice steady. If I don't learn to control the pressure, it'll just keep building up. Yue has the best facilities. They have recovery girl. If I stay here, if I don't train, I might explode. It was a cruel metaphor to use on his anxious mother, but it was effective. Inko gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I won't let that happen, she sobbed, rushing over to hug him carefully, avoiding his injured side. I'm so sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry I didn't know. I should have taken you to a specialist sooner. It's not your fault, he whispered into her hair, staring blankly at the All Might poster on his wall. The hero in the poster grinned, giving a thumbs up. Izuku didn't smile back. It's just biology. Ding dong. The doorbell echoed through the apartment. Mother and son froze. They pulled apart, looking toward the hallway. I'll get it, Inko said, wiping her face. She returned a moment later, holding a white envelope with the Yue seal in red wax. It looked heavy. Ominous. They sat at the dining table. Izuku took the envelope with his good hand. He didn't tear it open with excitement like he had dreamed of doing for years. He opened it with the precision of a bomb disposal technician. He slid a metal disc out onto the table. A hologram flickered to life. I am here. All Might's projection filled the small living room. He was in his Silver Age costume, beaming, posing. As a projection, Inko let out a small squeak of surprise. Young Midoriya! The recording boomed. You have completed the exam. The written portion? Passed with flying colors. A truly analytical mind. But the practical. The video cut to footage of the exam. It showed Izuku standing paralyzed in front of the gathered robots. Then the zero-pointer. Then the jump. The camera angle was from the ground, looking up. It showed the raw, terrifying violence of the smash. It showed the robot's head disintegrating. Destruction, All Might's voiceover said somber now. Power without control is a danger to all. You scored 0 villain points. By the traditional metric you failed. Inko grabbed Izuku's hand. Izuku didn't flinch. He knew the script. But a hero is not judged solely by what they break, but by what they protect. The video shifted. It showed Ochako Uraraka in the negotiation room, pleading with President Mike to give her points to Izuku. This young lady was willing to sacrifice her score for you. Why? Because you sacrificed your body for her. The score tally appeared on the screen. Villain points 0, rescue points 60, 60 rescue points. Izuku Midoriya, you pass. Inko burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. You did it! You did it, Izuku! But the video wasn't over. All Might cleared his throat on the recording. He leaned closer to the camera, his expression serious. However, UA High School is an institution of safety and excellence. Your performance demonstrated a catastrophic lack of self-preservation and quirk control. The faculty has debated your admittance. Izuku held his breath. You are accepted, young Midoriya. But you are accepted on a probationary status regarding your physical health. Enclosed is a liability waiver and a mandatory quirk counseling schedule. This is your hero academia, but for you, it is also your rehabilitation. Come, Midoriya, and learn to keep yourself whole. The hologram faded. Inko looked up, tear-streaked but relieved. Probationary? Rehabilitation? It means they're going to help me, Izuku lied, smoothing out the paper waiver that had fallen from the envelope. It was a legal document absolving UA of responsibility if his quirk killed him. It means I have a chance. April, the first day. The cherry blossoms were falling, painting the sidewalks of Muzutafu in shades of pale pink. It was the quintessential image of spring, of new beginnings. Izuku Midoriya walked through the UA gates, and he felt like an imposter in paradise. His uniform was crisp, the buttons shining, but underneath the blazer, his body was a roadmap of tape and tension. He wore a compression sleeve on his right arm, hidden by the jacket, and a specialized brace on his leg that he had ordered from a support gear catalog, claiming it was for circulation. He kept his head down, muttering softly to himself, "Don't look at the ground. Look forward." Confidence, but not arrogance. You are the tragic genius. You are the boy with the hurricane inside. He navigated the halls, finding the massive door labeled 1A. He stood before it, his heart hammering against his ribs. This is it. Behind this door are the people I have to fool for the next 3 years. One slip up, and All Might falls. He took a deep breath, grabbed the handle, and slid the door open. Remove your foot from the desk. It is disrespectful to the UA upperclassmen and the craftsmen who made it. Ha! Stop talking, Four Eyes. What junior high did you go to, you extra? Izuku froze. The voices were familiar. Too familiar. Tenya Ida was standing stiffly, chopping the air with his hand. And sitting with his feet up on the desk, looking like a king on a throne of indifference, was Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku felt a spike of genuine fear. Bakugo hadn't spoken to him since the exam. The silence had been worse than the yelling. Bakugo's eyes flicked to the door. They locked onto Izuku. The room went quiet. Ida turned, his glasses flashing. Ah! You Actua, Deku, Bakugo growled. He didn't yell. His voice was low, dangerous. He swung his legs off the desk and stood up. Izuku instinctively took a step back, his hand going to his injured arm. Keikaken. Bakugo walked toward him. The other students watched, sensing the history, the tension. Bakugo stopped a foot away from Izuku, looming over him. You got in, Bakugo said. Ah yes, Izuku stammered, With that quirk? Yes. Bakugo stared at him. For years, he had looked at Deku and seen a pebble. A bug? Nothing. Now, he looked at Deku and saw something he couldn't categorize. He saw the boy who had punched a giant robot into oblivion. You lied, Bakugo whispered, too quiet for the others to hear. For 10 years. You laughed at me behind my back, didn't you? Watching me brag, knowing you had that stored up. No! Izuku hissed back, desperate to keep the volume down. It wasn't like that. I told you. I was sick. It wasn't power, Kaken, it was a blockage. I thought I was dying. Bakugo searched his face. He was looking for the deception. He was looking for the smirk. But all he saw was the same terrified, wet-eyed Deku he had always known, and that confused him more than anything. If you get in my way, Bakugo said, smoke curling from his palms, I'll kill you. Blockage or not. If you explode, do it somewhere else. He turned and stomped back to his seat. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Midoriya! Ida marched over, seizing Izuku's hand and shaking it vigorously. I am Tenya Ida from Semi-Private Academy. I must apologize. During the exam, I misjudged you completely. I thought you were hesitant, but you had perceived the true nature of the test, rescue. And you did so despite your, condition. Ida glanced at the way Izuku held his arm. Condition? Izuku echoed. The overcharge, Ida said loudly. Too loudly. I read the news reports. A tragic mutation. To wield such power at the cost of your own skeletal integrity is noble. Reckless, but noble. Oh, it's the plain-looking boy. Ochako Uraraka popped up behind Ida, beaming. You got in. I was so worried. How's your arm? And your legs? You looked like a pretzel. I'm managing, Izuku said, forcing a pained smile. Recovery girl patched me up, but the doctors say I have to be careful. The pressure acts like a hydraulic press on my bones. That sounds scary, Uraraka said, her smile fading into sympathy. We'll look out for you, okay? Izuku felt a stab of guilt. They're so nice. And I'm lying to their faces. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. Lying in a yellow sleeping bag like an oversized caterpillar was a man with messy black hair and tired eyes. He sucked on a jelly pouch, staring at them with utter boredom. It took you 8 seconds to shut up, the man said, unzipping the bag and standing up. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He pulled a gym uniform out of his bag. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me on the grounds. The locker room. The boys' locker room was a cacophony of zippers and chatter. Man, I can't believe we have a quirk assessment on the first day. Complained a boy with yellow hair and a black streak Kaminari. I didn't even get to check out the cafeteria. Izuku stood in the corner, facing his locker. He slowly unbuttoned his shirt. He was dreading this moment. The unveiling. He slid the shirt off. Whoa, dude. The room went quiet. Eijiro Kirishima, the redhead who had admired him during the exam, was staring at Izuku's back. Izuku's torso was a map of evidence. There were faded yellow bruises from the beach cleaning. There was the fresh, angry red scarring on his right shoulder where the recoil had torn the skin. But mostly, there were the support patches, black kinesiology tape running in complex patterns along his spine and arms. It looked like he was holding himself together with glue. That looks rough, man, Kirishima said, his voice respectful. Is that from the exam? Some of it, Izuku lied, pulling the blue gym shirt on quickly. Some of it is, older. The pressure builds up in the joints. If I don't tape it, the vibrations cause microfractures. So you're like, constantly holding back an explosion? Sero asked, looking concerned. Basically, Izuku said, grabbing his shoes. It's like carrying a bomb that I can't put down. Bakugo, shirtless 2 lockers away, slammed his locker door shut. The metal clang made everyone jump. He didn't say a word. He just glared at Izuku's back, at the tape, at the scars, and stormed out. Izuku swallowed. Phase 1 complete. They believe the frailty. P grounds. The class stood in a cluster on the dirt field. Aizawa stood before them, holding a softball. A quirk apprehension test? Uraraka chirped. But what about the entrance ceremony? The guidance counselor meeting? If you want to be heroes, you don't have time for such niceties, Aizawa droned. His eyes scanned the students, landing heavily on Izuku. Aizawa had read the file 3 times. Midoriya Izuku. Quirk, overcharge. Liability assessment, critical. He remembered the faculty meeting. All Might had argued for the boy's potential. Aizawa had argued that potential didn't matter if the boy was dead by age 16. Softball throw, Aizawa said. Bakugo. You finished first in the entrance exam. How far could you throw in junior high? 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. Try it with your quirk. Anything goes, just stay in the circle. Bakugo stepped into the circle. He stretched his arms, a savage grin spreading across his face. I'll show them. I'll show Deku the difference between a broken tool and a master. Die. Boom. The explosion was massive. The ball rocketed into the sky, leaving a trail of smoke. Aizawa held up his device. 705.2 meters. The class erupted. Awesome. We can use our quirks as much as we want? This looks like fun. Aizawa's expression darkened. His hair began to float, his scarf writhing like a living thing. Fun? He whispered. You have 3 years to become heroes. You think it's all going to be fun and games? He lowered the device. Right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential, and will be punished with expulsion. The air was sucked out of the field. Expulsion? Uraraka cried. It's the first day. That's too unreasonable. Natural disasters are unreasonable, Aizawa countered coldly. Villain attacks are unreasonable. Yui is here to teach you how to handle the unreasonable. He looked directly at Izuku. If you can't keep up without breaking yourself, you don't belong here. Izuku felt the gaze physically. It wasn't a challenge, it was a threat. Aizawa wasn't testing his strength, he was testing his sustainability. He knows, Izuku realized. He knows I'm the one most likely to fail this. If I use one for all, I break my arm again. If I don't use it, I'm dead last. The tests began. 50-meter dash. Ida rocketed past in 3.04 seconds. Izuku stood at the line against Bakugo. If I use the quirk on my legs, I shatter my femur. I can't do that. He ran normally. 7.02 seconds. Average. Bakugo blasted past him in 4.13. Too slow, Deku. He taunted. Grip strength. Mizo Shoji, 540 kilograms. Izuku, 56 kilograms. He feigned a wince, shaking his hand as if the effort hurt his inflamed joints. It sold the lie, but it hurt his score. Standing long jump. He used the tiny flicker of one for all, maybe 1%, just to clear the sandpit. He landed awkwardly, stumbling. Careful. Uraraka gasped. I'm okay, Izuku panted. Just a little recoil. By the time they reached the ball throw, Izuku was sweating profusely. He was sitting near the bottom of the rankings. Not last. Mineta was struggling, but close enough to the edge. Midoriya, Aizawa called. Izuku stepped into the circle. The ball felt heavy in his hand. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher was watching him like a hawk. If I throw this normally, I get 40 meters. I get expelled. And All Might's secret dies with my career. If I use 100%, I break my arm. I get a huge score, but Aizawa expels me for self-destruction. He needed a third option. He needed to modify the lie. The file says narrow expulsion canals. It says I can't let the energy out fast enough. Izuku remembered the feeling of the egg in the microwave. He remembered the image of the valve. I don't need to open the floodgates. I just need to pierce the pipe. He wound up. He activated one for all. The red veins glowed on his skin. The power rushed to his arm. Stop. Not the whole arm. He focused. He visualized the power condensing, not into a punch, but into a flick. Into the very tip of his index finger. Sacrifice the part to save the whole. Smash! He screamed internally. He whipped his arm forward. At the last millisecond, he channeled the power into his index finger. Snap! The sound was sickeningly loud. A shockwave blasted from his fingertip. The ball vanished, rocketing into the stratosphere with a sonic boom that knocked the dust off the ground. Izuku gritted his teeth, clutching his hand. His finger was broken, purple and swollen. But his arm was intact. He turned to Aizawa, tears pricking his eyes, real tears of pain, mixed with the tears of a performance. Izuku gasped, holding up his throbbing hand. I vented the pressure. Just a little. Aizawa stared at him. He looked at the phone. 705.3 meters. He looked back at the boy. The teacher's eyes were wide, the dry eye drops forgotten. He had expected the boy to shatter his arm. He had expected a liability. Instead, he saw a tactical decision. The boy had maimed a single digit to achieve a hero-level result, minimizing the catastrophic damage he was known for. It wasn't control. But it was logic, Mr. Aizawa. Izuku said, his voice trembling as he played the role of the desperate patient. I can still move. My arm isn't broken. I can still fight. Aizawa's grin was terrifying. Ho! Bakugo stood in the background, his mouth agate. He saw the finger. He saw the score. He beat Bakugo by 0.1 meters. DKU, Bakugo lunged. You bastard! Tell me how you did that. What the hell is venting? Suddenly, scarf material wrapped around Bakugo, restraining him. Stand down, Aizawa commanded, his hair floating again. My eyes are drying out. He dropped Bakugo and turned to the class. Midoriya. Go see the nurse about that finger. The rest of you, move to the sit-ups. Izuku stumbled out of the circle, clutching his hand. As he walked past Aizawa, the teacher spoke, low enough that only Izuku could hear. You bought yourself some time, kid. But a quirk that eats you alive isn't a gift. It's a ticking clock. Make sure you're worth the time remaining. Izuku nodded, pale and shaking. He walked toward the main building. As he turned the corner, out of sight of the class, he leaned against the wall and slid down until he hit the dirt. He looked at his broken finger. It throbbed in time with his heart. I survived day one, he thought. Only 3 years to go. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket with his good hand and scribbled a note under quirk usage. Finger flick viable. Cover story, pressure valve manual release. Status, accepted. Pain level, 8/10. Izuku closed the book, stood up, and walked toward the nurse's office to get his next layer of bandages. The lie was heavy, but he was getting stronger at carrying it. The walk to the nurse's office was a lonely pilgrimage. Izuku Midoriya held his right hand against his chest, cradling the throbbing, violet-bruised finger that had just bought him his future. The adrenaline of the quirk apprehension test was fading, replaced by a cold, biting reality. The pain was sharp, a rhythmic stabbing sensation that synchronized with his heartbeat, but the mental load was heavier. He wasn't just nursing a broken bone, he was nursing a fabricated reality. Every step down the empty corridor echoed. Tap. 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 Izuku pulled his notebook, The Pyre Principle, Volume 1, from his back pocket with his good hand. He flipped it open, pressing it against the wall to scribble a quick entry, his handwriting shaky. Event, ball throw. Action, focus discharge into index finger. Cover story, manual pressure valve release. Observation, Aizawa-sensei accepted the logic. He values rationality over preservation. If I had broken the whole arm, I would be expelled. By sacrificing 1%, I saved the 99%. Note, maintain the wince. Even when the pain fades, the overcharged quirk is supposed to cause constant low-level agony due to internal pressure. Never look comfortable. He pocketed the book and adjusted his expression in the reflection of a trophy case. He relaxed his jaw, let his eyelids droop slightly, and practiced the look of someone chronically managing a heavy load. When he opened the door to the nurse's office, Recovery Girl was already spinning in her chair, a scowl etched into her face. You act fast, Sonny, she grumbled, hopping down. School hasn't been in session for 3 hours and you've already shattered a phalanx. Sit. Izuku sat on the examination bed, holding out his hand. It was necessary. Aizawa was going to expel me. Eraserhead is a hard man, Recovery Girl admitted, examining the swollen digit. She didn't kiss it immediately. Instead, she pulled out a file, the fake file, and a red pen. Before I fix this, we have to update the lie. She opened the folder labeled Midoriya, Izuku Quirk, Overcharge. I'm marking this down as a structural failure due to sudden pressure venting, she said, writing as she spoke. If anyone asks, if Aizawa asks, I will tell them that your Quirk channels are calcified from years of suppression medication. That makes the energy output jagged rather than smooth. That explains why you break. Calcified channels, Izuku repeated, memorizing the jargon. Got it. I'm going to heal the bone, she said, leaning in. But I'm leaving the bruising and the inflammation. A quirk like the one you're pretending to have wouldn't heal cleanly. You need to look like you're dealing with the aftermath for days. Can you handle the soreness? I've been sore for 10 months, Izuku said quietly. Recovery Girl's expression softened, just a fraction. She leaned forward and kissed his knuckle. Smooch. The stamina drain hit him instantly. Izuku slumped, his head feeling light. The sharp pain in the bone vanished, replaced by a deep, dull ache that radiated up to his elbow. The finger was still purple, still ugly, but it was whole. Here, she said, tossing him a bag of gummies. Eat. Then get back out there. The results ceremony is happening. Izuku chewed the gummies slowly. Do you think Aizawa suspects? Eraserhead suspects everyone, Recovery Girl said, turning back to her computer. But he respects logic. You gave him a logical reason for your injury. As long as your story stays consistent, he won't dig. But if you slip up, if you show too much control, or not enough pain, he'll tear you apart. The pea grounds. The sun was dipping lower, casting long, orange shadows across the dirt field. Class 1A stood in a loose semicircle, waiting. When Izuku emerged from the main building, the conversation died. 20 pairs of eyes locked onto him. They weren't looking at him with the disdain they had shown at the start of the class, nor with the pure awe of the entrance exam. It was a complicated mix of fear, pity, and confusion. Midoriya! Ida was the first to break the silence, marching over with his robotic stride. Your finger. Is it treated? Yeah, Izuku said, holding up the tape digit. He made sure to keep his elbow tucked in, a subtle body language cue implying guarding. Recovery Girl fixed the break, but the pressure bruising takes time to fade. That looked incredibly painful, Uraraka said, hovering over Ida's shoulder. You just snapped it. On purpose. I had to, Izuku said, looking at the ground. This was the rehearsal. My quirk, the overcharge, it builds up. Like a boiler. If I tried to throw that ball without opening a valve, the backlash would have shattered my shoulder. Sacrificing a finger was the only way to vent the energy safely. Safely? Mineta squeaked from behind a taller student. Dude, you blew your finger up. That's not safe. It's safer than the alternative, a deep voice rumbled. The students parted as Shoto Todoroki spoke. The dual-haired boy was looking at Izuku with a cold, analytical intensity. If he hadn't done that, he would have failed the test. He chose the minimum damage required to succeed. It was a tactical trade-off. Izuku met Todoroki's mismatched eyes. He's analyzing me. He's buying the volatile narrative. Exactly, Izuku said, locking onto that explanation. It's a trade-off. It always is. All right, shut up and look at the screen. Aizawa's voice cut through the group. He pressed a button on his phone, and a holographic display projected into the air. Total score rankings. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. He scanned the list, starting from the bottom. 21. Minoru Mineta. 20. Izuku Midoriya. He froze. 20th place. He wasn't last. But he wasn't safe. By the way, Aizawa said, his voice bored, the expulsion thing was a logical ruse. The class erupted. Hiya? You're kidding. I was so scared. It was a ruse to draw out your maximum potential, Aizawa explained, a terrifyingly wide grin stretching his face. Well, that was obvious, Yayorosa sighed, hand on her chest. If you thought about it rationally. No, Izuku thought, his eyes locked on Aizawa's face. It wasn't a lie. He would have done it. If I had finished 21st. If I hadn't thrown that ball. I would be gone. He looked at the list again. He had barely scraped by. His grip strength was average. His jumps were assisted by tiny, painful bursts of one for all. But the ball throw, that 705 meters, had skyrocketed his weighted average just enough to surpass Mineta, whose physique limited him in the sprints and distance runs. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Izuku snapped to attention. Yes, sir. Aizawa walked over, towering over him. The teacher's eyes were dark pools of judgment. You're not last, Aizawa said quietly. But you are hovering over the precipice. Your quirk is a disaster waiting to happen. Today, you showed me you can manage the disaster by aiming the explosion away from your vital organs. That is the only reason you are still standing here. He leaned closer. Don't think this makes you special. If you become a liability in the field, if I have to save you because you broke your legs to catch a purse snatcher, I will expel you immediately. Do you understand? Yes, sir, Izuku whispered. Good. Handouts with the curriculum are in the classroom. Dismissed. Aizawa turned and walked away, his sleeping bag trailing in the dust. As the class began to disperse, chatting excitedly about their survival, Izuku felt a burning sensation on the back of his neck. He turned. Katsuki Bakugo was standing 10 feet away. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't sparking. He was just staring. His red eyes were wide, pupils dilated, shaking with a mixture of rage and something that looked uncomfortably like betrayal. Deku, Bakugo said. His voice was hollow. We need to talk. Behind the school, sunset. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves of the trees lining the path behind the main building. It was a secluded spot, out of sight of the main gates. Izuku stood with his back to the wall, clutching his strap. Bakugo stood 5 paces away, his hands clenched at his sides. Start talking, Bakugo said. Kaken, don't give me the crap about getting lucky. Bakugo snapped, stepping forward. I watched you. I watched you for 10 years. You were quirkless. You were a pebble. The doctor said so. Your mom said so. You cried in the park because you couldn't be like All Might. Bakugo's voice cracked. So tell me, were you laughing at me? Were you laughing the whole time? Watching me act like the best, knowing you had that in your pocket? This was the moment. The divergence point. In another life, Izuku might have stammered the truth about receiving the power yesterday. He might have tried to explain the miracle, but in this life, the lie was the shield. And to protect the shield, he had to hurt his friend. He had to rewrite their entire history. Izuku looked down. He let his shoulders slump. He summoned the memory of the hospital bed, of the fear he felt when Tsukachi changed the records. I wasn't laughing, Kaken, Izuku said softly. I was dying. Bakugo froze. What? Izuku looked up, tears welling in his eyes, tears of guilt that he weaponized into tears of tragedy. The doctor, the first one, he was wrong. Or he lied to protect me. I wasn't quirkless. I had a quirk. But it was stuck. He tapped his chest. My body was producing energy, but the pathways were closed. It was like filling a balloon with water and taping the nozzle shut. It just kept filling up. And filling up. Bakugo took a step back, his aggression faltering. That doesn't make sense. You would have blown up. I almost did, Izuku lied, his voice trembling. Why do you think I was so weak? Why do you think I never fought back when you pushed me around? It wasn't because I was scared of you. It was because if I got too angry, if my heart rate went too high, I could feel it. The pressure. I was on suppressants, Kaken. Heavy ones? For years. Izuku took a step forward, pressing the advantage. You asked if I was laughing? I was terrified. I spent every day wondering if I was going to explode in my sleep. I watched you be amazing, and I wished I was quirkless. Because being quirkless is safe. Being this. He gestured to his bandaged finger. This is a curse. Bakugo stared at him. The narrative in his head, the story of the weakling Deku who looked down on him, was shattering. It was being replaced by something darker. So. Bakugo swallowed. So you lied. For 10 years. I had to, Izuku whispered. To protect myself. To protect Mom. If the government knew I was walking around with a biological nuke in my chest, they would have locked me up. I just wanted to be normal, Kaken. I just wanted to go to school with you. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Bakugo looked at Izuku's hand. He thought back to the river. He thought back to every time he had blasted Deku, every time he had told him to take a swan dive. If Deku had been telling the truth, if he had been sitting on a powder keg of pain the whole time, Bakugo felt a sensation he despised. Guilt. You're a damn liar, Bakugo grunted, looking away. But the bite was gone from his voice. So what changed? Why now? The doctors said the suppressants were failing, Izuku improvised. The pressure was getting too high. They said I had two choices, let it kill me, or try to learn to vent it. That's why I applied to UA, not to show off. But because if I don't learn to control this, I'm dead anyway. Bakugo kicked the dirt. He shoved his hands deep into his pockets. Whatever, he muttered. He turned his back on Izuku. Don't think this changes anything. You're still a pebble. You're just a pebble that might blow up in my face. He started to walk away, then paused. He didn't look back. If you die before I get to beat you, I'll kill you myself. It was the most twisted, aggressive form of concern Bakugo could offer. I won't die, Kaken, Izuku said. Bakugo grunted and stomped off toward the train station. Izuku watched him go. He let out a long, shaky breath, sliding down the wall again until he was crouching. He buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry, Kaken, he thought. I'm so sorry. He had saved the secret. But he felt like a villain. The next day, UA faculty room, Aizawa sat at his desk, staring at a computer screen. The light from the monitor reflected in his tired eyes. On the screen were two windows. On the left, Izuku Midoriya's medical file, the falsified one provided by Tsukachi. On the right, a replay of the ball throw. You're staring at him again, a voice chirped. Aizawa didn't look up as Midnight leaned over his shoulder. He's illogical. He seems pretty logical to me, she said, tapping the screen where Izuku was holding his broken finger. He realized he couldn't handle the full output, so he minimized the surface area of the discharge. It's crude, but effective. It's the file that bothers me, Aizawa muttered. Look at this. Congenital narrowing of expulsion canals. It says he was on suppressants until 10 months ago. Suddenly, he goes off them and manifests enough power to alter weather patterns? Quirks are weird, Shota, Present Mike yelled from across the room. Maybe he's just a late bloomer on steroids. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. The HPSC registry shows the update was made recently, but backdated. It claims lost records from a clinic that burned down. Coincidences happen, Midnight shrugged. Why are you so obsessed? Do you want to expel him? Aizawa paused. He watched the video again. He watched the look on Izuku's face right before the throw. It wasn't the face of an arrogant power type. It was the face of a surgeon cutting off a limb to save the body. No, Aizawa said, closing the window. I don't want to expel him. If he was arrogant, I would. But he's not. He's terrified. He spun his chair around. He fights like he's handling a bomb. That makes him dangerous, but it also makes him cautious. I can work with cautious. So he stays? He stays, Aizawa confirmed. But I'm watching him. If that overcharged story is a cover for something else, I'll find out. Class 1A, Hero Basic Training. The afternoon sun flooded the classroom. The anxiety of the previous day's test had dissipated, replaced by the buzzing energy of teenagers realizing they were really, truly in a hero course. I am. The door burst open. Coming through the door like a normal person, All Might marched into the room, his silver age cape fluttering in a non-existent wind. The class cheered. It's All Might. He's actually teaching us. Look at that costume. It's so retro. Izuku felt a spike of panic mixed with pride. Seeing All Might here, in the flesh, was the dream. But now, every interaction was a minefield. All Might marched to the podium, his grin blinding. But when his eyes swept the room and landed on Izuku, there was a microscopic pause. A flicker of concern. Foundational Hero Studies. All Might boomed. Today, we will be building the bedrock of your hero careers. And what is a hero without? He pressed a button on the wall. Shelves slid out, revealing numbered suitcases. Costumes. The class roared with excitement. Get changed and meet me at Ground Beta. Ground Beta, the locker rooms. Izuku opened his case. Inside lay the green jumpsuit his mother had bought him, or rather, the base of it. He had sent the design specifications to a support company using a voucher All Might had provided, but he had added specific requests to fit the overcharged narrative. He pulled out the mask. It had a respirator aesthetic, though it was non-functional. He pulled out the gloves. They were bulky, reinforced with thick white plating and piping that ran up the arms. "Whoa, Midoriya," Kirishima said from the bench next to him. "That looks intense." "What's with the piping?" Izuku pulled the suit on. It was snug. "It's a cooling system." "Sort of." He strapped the white knee pads on. "Since my quirk generates internal pressure, the suit is designed to compress my limbs," Izuku explained, reciting the script he had practiced. "The piping helps distribute the shockwaves so my bones don't take the full brunt of it. It's a containment suit, basically." "That's manly," Kirishima nodded aggressively. "Like wearing a straitjacket for your own power." "Yeah," Izuku muttered, pulling on the gloves. "Something like that." When he walked out into the sunlight of ground beta, he felt exposed. The other students looked amazing. Bakugo looked like a walking explosion. Ida looked like a knight. Uraraka looked, well, tight. "Oh, Deku?" Uraraka waved. "I love the ears. They're cute." Izuku blushed. "Thanks. They're, aerodynamic. Looking good, embryos." All Might shouted. "Now, let's get started. We will be conducting indoor battle trials," he explained the rules. "Heroes versus villains. The nuclear weapon. Now let's draw lots." Izuku watched the screen. His heart sank. Team A, Izuku, Midoriya, Ochako, Uraraka, heroes. Team D, Katsuki, Bakugo, Tenya, Ida, villains. Fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Bakugo stared at Izuku from across the crowd. He punched his palm, creating a small explosion. The look in his eyes wasn't just anger anymore. It was the look of a scientist wanting to test a hypothesis. "Let's see if you really explode, Deku." The setup. Inside the building, Bakugo and Ida stood by the papier-mâché bomb. "So," Ida said, tapping his helmet. "Midoriya and Uraraka. A formidable team. Midoriya's power is destructive, but self-harming. If we can force him into a prolonged engagement, his body will give out." "Shut up," Bakugo growled. He was pacing. "Bakugo? He's mine," Bakugo muttered. "I'm going to crush him." "We should prioritize protecting the weapon," Ida argued. "I said shut up." Bakugo turned, his gauntlets clanking. "He lied to me, Four Eyes. He thinks he's tragic? He thinks he's a ticking time bomb? I'm going to see how much pressure he can really take." Outside, Izuku and Uraraka studied the blueprints. "So, Kaken is going to come for me," Izuku said, his voice shaking slightly. "You think so?" Uraraka asked. "I know so. He hates me. And after yesterday, he wants answers." Izuku looked at his gloved hands. "Uraraka, I can't use my quirk against him. If I do, I might kill him. Or I'll break my arm and be useless. So what do we do?" Izuku tapped the side of his head. "We use the lie," he whispered. "I need you to go for the weapon. I'm going to distract him. I'm going to make him think I'm about to blow." "Bluffing?" Uraraka grinned. "I like it. Start." All Might's voice echoed over the speakers. They entered the window. The dark corridors smelled of dust and concrete. They moved silently. But silence wasn't what Bakugo wanted. Boom! Bakugo rounded the corner, flying through the air with an explosion. He didn't aim for Uraraka. He aimed straight for Izuku's face. Izuku barely dodged, the heat singing his cowl. He rolled and came up in a defensive stance. "Come on, Deku!" Bakugo screamed, turning midair with terrifying agility. "Vent it! Show me that curse of yours! Uraraka, go!" Izuku yelled. Uraraka nodded and sprinted down the hall. Bakugo ignored her completely. "It's just us now," Bakugo grinned, smoke drifting from his palms. "Don't hold back. If you do, I'll hurt you until you pop." Izuku took a deep breath. He adopted a fighting stance, not All Might's stance, but something lower, more guarded. "I don't want to fight you, Kaken." "Too bad." Bakugo launched a right hook. Izuku analyzed it. Right swing. Wide arc. He ducked. He grabbed Bakugo's arm. "Now. Use the script." "Warning!" Izuku shouted, his voice cracking. Pressure rising. "Get back!" He didn't use one for all. He simply used Bakugo's momentum to flip him over his shoulder. It was a judo move, basic martial arts. Bakugo slammed into the concrete, the wind knocked out of him. What? Bakugo wheezed. That wasn't a quirk. I told you. Izuku backed away, clutching his chest theatrically. I can't control it. If I use it, the building comes down. Do you want to die, Kaken? It was a brilliant bluff. By claiming his power was too dangerous to use in close quarters, Izuku justified fighting quirkless. He turned his weakness into a tactical threat. Bakugo scrambled up, his eyes wild. Don't mock me. You think I can't handle your power? I think you're stupid if you want me to unleash a stockpile of 10 years on your face. Izuku yelled back. Bakugo hesitated. For the first time in his life, he hesitated. The lie was working. Bakugo believed the overcharged narrative so much that he was actually afraid of triggering it. I have him, Izuku thought. He's fighting the story, not me. But then, Bakugo's expression shifted. He raised his gauntlet. He reached for the pin. If you won't use it. Bakugo smiled, a manic, terrifying expression. Then I'll force it out of you. Young Bakugo, stop. All Might's voice crackled in their earpieces. Are you trying to kill him? He won't die if he blocks it. Bakugo roared. He has to vend it. Or he dies. He pulled the pin. Izuku's eyes widened. The hallway lit up orange. He's not buying the bluff. He's calling it. Izuku had a split second. Logic dictated he run. But if he ran, the blast would catch Uraraka down the hall. Logic deception failed. Brute force required. One for all, 100%. No. He couldn't do 100%. Think. The egg. The microwave. Don't explode the egg. Calling. He hadn't mastered it yet. He had only tried it once in the shower, and bruised his whole body. But he had no choice. Izuku spread the energy. Not just to his arm. To his legs. To his torso. It was agony. It felt like his veins were being filled with boiling mercury. Quirk, overcharge active. Green lightning arced around him, wild and uncontrolled. Detroit. He punched. Not at Bakugo. At the blast. Smash! The explosion met the air pressure. The result was a cataclysm. The floor shattered. The walls blew out. The ceiling disintegrated. Upstairs, Uraraka grabbed the pillar as the floor beneath her shook. She saw the debris flying. She saw Ida distracted by the tremor. Sorry, Ida! She yelled, floating herself in a piece of rubble. Home run comet! She swatted the debris, sending it crashing into Ida, and dove for the weapon. Hero team wins. Downstairs, the smoke cleared. Izuku stood in the center of a crater. His sleeve was gone. His right arm was a mess of purple and red, hanging limp. But he was standing. Bakugo lay on his back near the wall, shielded from the worst of it by Izuku's punch redirecting the blast. He stared up at the hole in the ceiling. He stared at Izuku. Izuku turned to him. He was panting, blood dripping from his nose. I told you, Izuku rasped, clutching his ruined arm. The valve is stuck. He collapsed. Observation room. The class was silent. What was that? Kaminari whispered. That wasn't a fight. That was a war zone, Midoriya. Ajiri put a finger to her chin. He really is terrifying. Ribbit. All Might watched the screen, his heart in his throat. You reckless fool, All Might thought, gripping the console. You played the role too well. Aizawa, standing in the back of the room he had snuck in, narrowed his eyes. He blocked an explosion with air pressure, Aizawa noted. But he broke his arm again. He has zero self-preservation. But he won, All Might said softly. He won the battle. Aizawa turned to leave. But if he keeps fighting like that, he's going to lose the war against his own body. The narrative holds, All Might. He is exactly what the file says he is, unstable. As Aizawa walked down the hall, he pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. Tsukachi. It's Eraserhead. I need you to look into that clinic again. The one that burned down. I want to know who the doctor was. The deception was holding. But the cracks were starting to show. And the smartest man in the room was starting to peek through them.